All right, we are back here on a big day for the Yankees here as they pull off one of the biggest move, probably the biggest move of the offseason so far, the Juan Soto trade. Join me today to break it all down. Great friend of the podcast. You see him talk some Yankees on Twitter all the time. Dan Federico is here. Dan, how are you?
Hey, Mike, what's going on? Happy holidays. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, happy holidays here. Happy to talk some Yankee baseball here with you here. And I got to say, this conversation certainly was a bit different than what I thought we were talking about 3-4 days ago.
Yeah, a lot of big changes. One, maybe a medium-sized change, and then we had a real big one yesterday. So looking like a new Yankees team coming into 2024.
Yeah, before we get to the stuff from the last few days, I want to get your catch up on two things we missed while we were waiting for the meeting to start here. So, number one, were you surprised at all they didn't make any changes to the front office and manager after missing the playoffs?
You know what? I really wasn't. I thought if there was going to be one move, it would be for Aaron Boone to leave. But at the same time, the Yankees would have hired somebody who was just like Boone, and it would have really been a scapegoat situation since we all kind of know how in lockstep the front office and the manager is. So I didn't think it would have made much sense if you were going to keep Cashman around, which, again, that's something that we fully expected to happen. I mean, I don't see him going anywhere anytime soon. It'll probably be on his terms if something does happen. And not to fast forward into the conversation, but when he pulls off a move like he did yesterday for Juan Soto, that's kind of why you have him around. So wasn't really surprised. I just feel like there's too much, like I said before, too much cohesion between the manager and the front office, where even if you did get rid of an Aaron Boone, there would have been somebody next behind him who would have been a carbon copy of his style.
Yeah, I also think it's funny because he gets the last laugh here because I remember a couple weeks ago when he and Hal Steinbrenner were in Tampa and he catches this huge exchange report where he's getting very angry, defensive about the team's methods here. Like, you can kind of pull it off when you make big moves. If you were going to do the same thing, it would not have gone over as well.
Oh, yeah, no. I mean, him being defensive like that was something that was very out of character. I think everybody kind of saw that very much on the defensive, something that Yankees fans haven't really seen in the past. And at the same time, when you heard Hal Steinbrenner's quotes and statements, it was quite the opposite. He was a little more, wanting to improve, and, Cashman was more so defending what happened and, of course, using the injuries to his advantage when he defended what happened. So a part of me thought it was like a little bit of a good cop, bad cop type thing. I think it's pretty well known around the organization how people feel about Brian Cashman, not inside, but outside of the organization. The fans very vocal about how he's been and some of the trades he's made and some of the moves he's made. So I think in my mind, I saw it as a little bit of, well, all right, Cashman, I'm going to go fully all in on just being this guy who people don't like and just, really defending my process. And then at the same time, Hal being like, all right, there's ways we can improve. But meanwhile, behind the scenes, they're both, in lockstep in what has to happen. So I think it was a good cop, bad cop situation there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously, you get this big trade that happens on 11:30 Eastern time on the 6th. They pull off the deal with the Padres. They get Juan Soto and Trent Grisham for a package of 5 players: Michael King, Drew Thorpe, Randy Vasquez, Johnny Brito, Kyle Higashioka. That's the full deal here. So, your reaction to this trade now that it's finalized?
I mean, it's an absolute no-brainer move that the Yankees had to make. I mean, they're checking off boxes, in just one move where it's, you need a left-handed bat, a big one at that, check. You need reassurance in the outfield, check. You need somebody to, protect Aaron Judge in the lineup, or, whether it's batting in front of him or behind, that's something I guess we'll see as we go on. And then at the same time, you're adding somebody who is the same age as a prospect you called up that you have a lot of high hopes for this past season. So, I mean, like I said, no brainer. His credentials, his past speaks for itself. He's been a fantastic player in Major League Baseball. Speaking about the health issues right before, I mean, he's somebody who plays in games all the time. I mean, he's somebody who's always on the field, always playing. Listen, there's questions about his defense. Obviously, he's only under contract for 1 year, and with Scott Boras as his agent, they're not going to iron anything out till next offseason. But for the 2024 Yankees, which that's only as far as we can all look ahead to, it's the absolute perfect no-brainer, 100% move. And then when you factor in what they gave up for him, yes, they lost some pieces, but there's no one on there that would have stopped me from making the move. And, even for a 1 year deal, I think it was a pretty, move that I don't want to say a simple ask because they did give up 5 people for it, but, it was still a move where you check everyone off and say, yep, no problem. I'll give them up for somebody of Juan Soto's caliber.
Yeah, you want to talk about who some of the guys that get up here? Because obviously we saw Michael King at the end of last year sort of coming to his own as a starter. We got glimpses of Vasquez and Brito. Thorpe's the top prospect. Higashi is what he is here. What do you think about what they actually gave up here for 1 year of Soto?
Yeah, I mean, listen, the Yankees pitching, you always need pitching depth. Like, that's the name of baseball. You're only as good as your fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh starters at some points, you know? And they gave up what those guys translate to. I mean, Michael King was going to be a full-time starter going into this year. He showed what he could do last year. He was fantastic. I mean, if you really just look at his stuff as a whole, just the way his pitch is moving, the way he throws, like, you could probably say he's number 2 behind Garrett Cole in terms of just nastiness on the Yankee staff. So it's going to hurt. And he's somebody who, I was excited to watch this year. But then at the same time, 29 years old, 2 years of control left, including this coming season, and somebody who, doesn't have a lot of innings under his belt because he's fluctuated between starter and reliever. He's had injury issues in the past. So for how good he has been, there are question marks there as well. Brito, Vasquez, 2 guys that, on a winning team, they're important because they're those guys that are, your spot starter. You could plug him in if there's a short-term injury. If you need somebody to come out of the bullpen, they could kind of do both. So the 2 of them, not the big name prospects, but valuable pieces and pieces that could, go into the Padres starting rotation and give them a shot. So they're 2 arms that'll give them, whether it's starter, reliever, innings, they'll be on the major league roster and provide good stuff like they showed last year. Higgy obviously is, fan favorite, been in the organization since I think 2007 or 2009, like a very long time. One of the longest tenured Yankee, or the longest tenured Yankee in some time as well. Very loved in the clubhouse. Performed as well as he could for a platoon, backup catcher. He did his job. Great behind the plate. Caught a perfect game last year, obviously. So it's going to be a loss. And he was somebody who, I was interested in being with Austin Wells as like kind of a 1-2 punch. Obviously, that looks like that's going to go to Jose Trevino now with this move, but somebody that'll be valuable for the Padres as well. And then Drew Thorpe is, to me, despite King being, the big name, the MLB prize, I think Drew Thorpe has the potential to be like that obvious top prospect guy that goes in this move. He's somebody who is a 1-2 starter in the system, depending on who you ask. And he's close. Great stuff as well. Had a fantastic 2023 season. So he's a big prize for them. And that's a big get for them as well for just 1 year of somebody who they're probably going to lose in free agency.
Yeah, for sure. Here, I do give Brian Cashman credit here, too, for how he played the situation because obviously we heard all the reports on the Padres need to move reduce their payroll because of the MLB debt obligations they're sort of dealing with here. And I thought the leak they had last week about, they're out here asking for too much with King and Thorpe and sort of stamping their feet about we're asking for 7 guys in this trade to take on Grisham too. I thought they did a pretty good job sort of selling this in a way that the Padres look like we're asking for a lot and then they can claim a win by getting the 2 guys they didn't mind giving up.
Yeah, definitely. And you know what? This isn't a new take for me. I've seen it being talking about on sports radio and yes, last night I was watching a lot with this trade news and, it's a testament to the Yankees player development and their pitching development overall because they're able to flip these guys who, when you watch Yankees baseball and you see Johnny Brito or Randy Vasquez in there, again, valuable, but spot starter, on the screen shuttle all season long, going back and forth. And they were able to turn 2 of those guys into a package for one of the best players in baseball and one of probably the great young player in baseball. So it was a fantastic move. It speaks a lot of how they're developing pitchers and what other teams see in that. And that was also apparent, in the Rule 5 draft, the Yankees lost a lot of arm talent as well. So their process down there with their pitching has worked out and tenfold now bring in Juan Soto off the back of 4 pitchers.
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit ago. I want to get your take here, obviously, because Brian Cashman has also come out and said, hey, we know we only have him for 1 year for sure. We're prepared to make an offer free agency if he gets out there. How concerned are you the fact that Juan Soto is playing to test free agency after the season? Because I don't think they're considering he turned down $40 million from the Nationals, and I'm sure the Padres tried to come up with a deal and they couldn't come up with one. What's the concern that Soto is going to go test the market when you have teams like the Dodgers, the Mets, the Giants will have a lot of money, will definitely be making a run at him next winter?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say concerned. I mean, we all know that Scott Boras is not going to negotiate within the season, so you're operating with Juan Soto as under, the assumption that this is a 1 year deal, which it is. But at the same time, Cole's getting older. Judge is getting older. You have to strike now. I mean, they've lost valuable years not winning the World Series now. Whether that's, you could point all the way back to the Astros, which at this point is, water under the bridge, injuries, all these different things not working out. This is coming not down to the end, obviously, but we're in the middle of the pack here. And as these players get older, you can't expect them to, be a Cy Young again like Cole was this year, or an MVP candidate or MVP winner like Judge was 2 years ago. And if he was healthy this year, he was on track to do it again. So you have to strike while the iron's hot. You need to play for now. And that's what this move was. They didn't give up, a ton of big pieces where it affects them in other ways where they can't compete for a World Series. So I think solely as a 1-year deal, this is still a move you have to make 10 times out of 10.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that from the Yankee perspective here. And what about the other trade they made as well, which is the very rare Yankee-Red Sox trade? The Yankees send three pitching prospects to the Red Sox for Alex Verdugo to go play left field for them. What do you think about that trade?
Verdugo, I know, it's been public now, but they've been in love with him since at least the trade deadline this past year, or maybe not in love, but just definitely wanting to acquire him. And Cashman came out with a quote earlier today saying that it's been about 2 years that they've been interested in Verdugo. So it's somebody who they've had an eye on. Again, their goal was to add 2 left-handed bats, and that's what they did. Verdugo is somebody who, there's that one end where he's a little eccentric, and he's had his run-ins with different things personality-wise. That could be a great thing for New York, or it could be a bad thing. That remains to be seen. I always lean towards enjoying those type of players where they come in with a little bit of a swagger and just with a chip on their shoulder, wanting to succeed. But going back to how Cashman over the last couple of years have spoke about injuries, like I said before, Soto's played a lot. So is Verdugo. I mean, since he's been on the Red Sox, he played 53 of 60 games in the COVID year, and then he's played in no less than 140 games over the last 3 seasons with the Red Sox as well. Another left-handed bat, a little bit of defensive versatility there, even though he's not the best defender, but capable. You expect a little bit more home run total playing in Yankee Stadium, and again, just that edge, playing with a little bit of attitude. Obviously, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. We saw with Donaldson, it didn't work, but you see in years past with somebody like a Nick Swisher where it did work. So I like the move. Again, brings more balance to the lineup. They need more left-handed bats. Add some help in the outfield where last year they're running out, the bottom of the barrel of talent. No offense to them, but just in terms of comparing it to other teams, it was not a good situation out there in the outfield. So definite move that was needed. And like Soto, gave up pitching arms, but nothing really that affected, what their true depth is and what affects the Major League bullpen next year.
Yeah, for sure here. And obviously, one of the unintended consequences of this trade, and one of the Yankees are finally living with here, is that Verdugo's in left field, so is going to be your right fielder. While Stanton is still around as a DH, I know he's going to end up missing time with injuries. He's inevitable here. Aaron Judge is going to be primarily the center fielder this season here. And obviously, with his injury history, his age, the fact that, like, a guy of his body type, when he gets in his 30s, those guys historically don't last very long here. Like, I don't love it because, I feel like it's a risk with him. Like, that, like, the wear and tear of playing center field on an everyday basis could end up, like, leading to some more issues for him.
No, I agree 100%. It's definitely risky, especially with his toe. It's something that, Cashman came out and said today that if you were to give Judge truth serum, he would say he would want to be a full-time center fielder. Whether that's true or not, you also got to protect your most valuable, one of your most expensive assets. So it's going to be interesting. He could do it. We know that. I mean, there's no problem with him defensively being out there. It's more so, like you said, the wear and tear on his body. Obviously, Trent Grisham being in this trade is a big-time move, underrated move, because he's going to be that guy who's going to come in the 6th, 7th inning, and when they move things around and maybe take a Verdugo out, or whatever happens, they'll give Judge some relief. And like you said, they'll use the DH days that stand, injury history always looming. And then when you really think about it, all things go to plan. Now there could obviously be hiccups, but if all things go to plan, Dominguez will be back in the summer. You can kind of slot him back into center field, and so it could be maybe a half season move for Judge being in center. But yeah, like you said, I'm not the biggest fan of it, but where the upgrades came on offense is kind of where it plays and kind of what they got to do.
All right, let's always get to the other half of the Yamamoto equation here, which is Yoshinobu Yamamoto is the biggest non-Ohtani free agent on the board right now here. We know the Yankees love him. We know that they really want to get him. We've heard that they're willing to exceed the Cohen tax to get him on their roster here, to put him behind the Garrett Cole in the rotation here. So my question is to you is like, how high you think in terms of the contract, how you think they're willing to go for Yamamoto? Because we've seen reports originally it was going to be over $200 million. Now it might get close to $300 million. Like, how I think the Yankees are willing to go, because obviously they know they have a lot of money. They can do whatever they want, but like they're going to get very top heavy with their roster if they do intend keeping Soto long term as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting. Like you said, when he was first, interested in being posted, it was 7-year, I don't know, like $200 million, like just throwing out numbers. It wasn't anything like you see now, which is, there are a lot of reports that it could be a 10-year, $300 million, which is wild. If you base solely off of what he's done over in Japan, that's something he deserves. I mean, the guy's a gamer. He's pitched in big games. He's proven his worth time and time again. He's young. He's 25 years old, same age as Tanaka when he came over, I believe. Took home the MVP honors this year. I mean, his track record speaks for itself, and he's somebody who I think will translate well to Major League Baseball. In terms of the contract, I can't predict how much the Yankees would go, but I do know that it seems like they're willing to go with what needs to be given to him to get him. He's going to have a lot of suitors. Obviously, the Mets and their money they could wield out with Steve Cohen. They're going to be involved, and that's going to be a tough hill to overcome. But I mean, the Yankees have seen him all season long. They've been to Japan numerous times, whether it was Brian Cashman himself, Omar Minaya, some of the other guys underneath them. So their interest is real. I don't think they're worried about the money this year. I really do think they're going to do what they can to take home a championship, or at least be in that contention. I think that was obvious with Soto. Verdugo, I think, was $9 million too to take him on. So it's not like he was a cheap player either. And there's still players like Gleyber Torres who you're going to have to give a little bit of money to this year. And there's going to be a lot of payroll issues given out. And I think they're willing to exceed that tax to go for the championship. And that's something that would come with signing Yamamoto to this big deal.
Yeah, I think for me, the way I read the situation is basically, like, obviously we know the Dodgers, they don't get Ohtani, they're going to throw a ton of money at him. We know if the Mets, obviously, it seems like they're highly motivated to get involved here because Cohen went to Japan with Stearns to talk to Yamamoto and meet his family. We've heard rumors about how, like, he likes the Yankee brand, the Yankees saved his number for him, so on and so forth. I feel like if the money is close, he's going to pick the Yankees based on, like, all that stuff we know. The question is, like, how much the team like the Mets or the Dodgers have to outbid them to get him to leave money on the table? That's the thing I think you're worrying about if you're a Yankee fan.
Oh, no, 100%. It's like, if things are close, yeah, if reading the tea leaves, it seems like he wants to be a Yankee, or at least is very interested in it. But again, if you're going to go to, 12, if you're Steve Cohen, you go 12 years at, whatever $30 million a year is. I'm sorry, my math is terrible, but, something like that, that's something that how could you pass up an extra $60 million or whatever it may be? So it's going to be interesting. Again, he's 25, so I'm not even really worried about like the 10-year thing. I mean, you hope he lasts that long and can produce. But when you sign, any team signs players those contracts, you're paying them for the first 5, 6, 7 years. You're not worried about the last 3, 4. So it's going to be interesting because, like you said, Steve Cohen, deep pockets, as we know. The Dodgers always willing to spend money. It's going to be interesting, and the Yankees in the past have wanted to do that when George Steinbrenner was around. Ever since those days, they've definitely been more fiscally conservative, responsible, however you want to put it. But I'm just getting the sense that they're willing to kind of just blow past everything and do what needs to be done to finally bring in the 28th championship that has been eluding them for years now. So it's going to be interesting, but I think the Yankees will definitely be in the thick of it.
Yeah, for sure. You're going a couple other things here because obviously they have other concerns besides Yamamoto and Soto here. Because what else do you think they could really be looking for here? Because obviously they could always use more pitching. I know Cashin has said that right now they're viewing DJ LeMahieu as their third baseman, which it would be take away a spot for a guy like Oswald Peraza to play in here. So what else do you think the Yankees are going to really look at besides trying to fill the Yamamoto sign rotation slot?
Yeah, like you said, Yamamoto, I mean, they'll still need, I would say, another starter and then some depth pieces. Like they lost, not to harp back on it, but, Brito and Vasquez, they may not be top prospects, but they were valuable to this team. And their positions will need to be filled. So that's something the Yankees have to work on. I know Frankie Montas, there's been a lot of smoke there that the Yankees are still interested in bringing him back on an incentive-laden deal. That would be interesting to keep him at the back end of the rotation. I know he had varying levels of success and then obviously went down with an injury, but he's somebody who could be valuable in a role like that as well. And then I look to the bench a little bit. I mean, you obviously have Trent Grisham. Looks like Trevino's going to be back and to be that backup catcher, I would assume. And then I would think Oswaldo Cabrera could come off the bench and just be that Swiss Army knife kind of player everywhere. I do think, despite DJ being there, you still need someone else for first base because Rizzo is also another one who's coming off an injury, and you don't really know where he's going to be at. He's getting up there in age as well. Maybe first base could be something I would look at. And then, maybe using a Peraza, not off the bench, but to be a trade piece, whether it's to be for a pitcher or a position player. Maybe an Everson Pereira in that spot as well. So I think that fourth bench spot is something I'm interested in looking at, whether that's, a first baseman or maybe like a first baseman outfielder, like just something with a little bit of, defensive versatility and maybe a little bit of pop as well off the bench. Because when you look at it, Trent Grisham, lefty, so he'll see a little more uptick, but not necessarily a home run hitter. Same with Cabrera and obviously Trevino. So maybe a little pop off the bench would be something they can need.
Yeah, that's for sure here. And obviously, my last question here is obviously we know that they're going to be doing a lot of things here that if they do get this Yamamoto contract done here, they're going to have a lot of money invested at the top end of that roster here. And we've seen with the Padres, we saw with the Mets, we saw with the Yankees a little bit here that sometimes like in this modern age of baseball, like these kinds of rosters don't really work as well, especially with the amount of innings, injuries, and so on and so forth here. Would you be concerned at all that like I mean, we have no dispute. The top of their roster is great, but like, would you be worried that like, the depth of the overall roster could be a concern, especially like if they don't get the title this year? It seems to be like their number one priority.
Yeah, so I'm going to harken back to the first question where I said, Cashman believes in their process. I don't know if I necessarily agree on what he says and what he thinks, but he fully believes that, Anthony Rizzo, DJ LeMahieu, Giancarlo Stanton are going to bounce back and be the top players they were. And, he thinks Rodon is going to be the person who they signed to a contract, not the guy who performed in the first year of it. They think Volpe is going to take the next step next year. They think they have these guys on the roster. They're not looking to spread that wealth elsewhere to bring people in. They think it's already there. So the Yamamoto, the Sotos, the Verdugos, like these guys, they see, granted, not complimentary in terms of how they play, but just to what they already have, they see them as, those complementary pieces that as a whole will take them to the next level. I understand what you're saying. I do agree a lot. The top heavy rosters, a lot of times, don't tend to work out, but they think what they have is good enough. And, that's why they're bringing in Soto, Verdugo to kind of be those complementary pieces. Yamamoto hopefully will be that guy to fill out the rotation. And, they believe in what they have, not what they need. So I think they pretty much took care of outside of pitching, which, what if it's not Yamamoto, they're going to bring in somebody else. So, whether it's the left-handed outfielders, they check that off the list already, and the pitching they're going to need. But I think they see what's on their roster already as a fluke of what happened last year with injuries. And I think that they don't see it as being top-heavy. They just see it as these guys being compliments.
Yeah, I think the thing I would watch for here from a Yankee fan is just seeing the whole, the key for them, I feel like, to sustain this roster that you go top-heavy here is, like, you be able to do what the Dodgers do, just have these young position players come in and fill these holes that, like, at cheap rates, you're not having to go spend $15 million on a left fielder every year. Because I know the Dodgers have done that. The Yankees have not had that kind of success with young players outside of Judge, for the most part. Your Glaber a little bit, but, like, they really need this generation of the Anthony Volpe, the Jason Dominguez, Spencer Jones, Austin Wells. These guys to sort of fill these holes cheaply in order to make this model work.
Yeah, 100%. And you could argue that, they tried. You could give them credit for trying what the Dodgers do. The Dodgers just are terrific at always having someone else ready to go from the minor leagues. And, how many years did the Yankees give, the Clint Fraziers, the Miguel Andahars, the Esteban Floreos of the world, how many chances did they get to the point where they lose their value in total? So, like you said, they need those people waiting in the wings. I feel like, Yamamoto, for the sake of conversation, let's say they get him as well. It's interesting because despite the money, Yamamoto, Soto, these guys are 25 years old. They're getting into the primes of their careers. And then you pair them with Jason Dominguez and hopefully an Austin Wells and these guys who are, coming up at that level and at the back end of Judge and Cole. You kind of hope that all kind of strings together. It's going to be tough. You got to be a lot of money, like we've said time and time again. But yeah, I don't know. Like you mentioned, Spencer Jones is somebody they have high hopes on. Trey Sweeney is somebody they have high hopes on. A guy like Ben Rice, who has kind of flown under the radar, but he's a catcher, first baseman who is flying up the system, and he can make an impact soon. There's people like that who are in the minor leagues now. As we said in the past, you've had those Clint Frazier, those Miguel Andújars that haven't worked out. Just gotta hope it does at some point, and brings that alleviation of money onto the roster.
Absolutely, Dan. Thanks for all the time. I really appreciate it. People want to follow you on social media. I'm going to do that.
Yeah, you can follow me. I was going to say Twitter. You can follow me on X at Dan J. Federico. Always talking Yankees on there. And, just hit me up whenever you guys want.
All right, Dan. Thanks for all the time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.